안녕하세요. 저는 외국 남자입니다. 나는 웹사이트 이름은 외국인외.com입니다. 외국인외.com입니다. Hello, this is Waygookin, back with another video. Wanted to first give a shout out to all those who've been contacting me, especially those of you who have been contacting me from Africa. Really appreciate the support and love that you guys have been showing. So thank you very much for the blog reads and for the questions that you've asked. This video is about a question that I've been asked quite a bit more recently, but off and on over the past few years, and it has to do with how did I have such a good time in Korea? Many people wonder this because so many people want to go to Korea, but they hear so many negative stories about Korea. They hear about Koreans hating black people, Korean people being prejudiced, Korean people just having a hateful attitude. And so people wonder all the time, since I say so many positive things about my time when I was in Korea, how is it that I had such an experience when other people did not? So we'll go into that today. I would say first that some of the concerns that some of you who've contacted me had were concerns that I had as well. There were a lot of negative things that I was told by people who, some were supposedly my friends, but obviously weren't. Others were just people who felt a general concern. And so I was told that the prejudice that people sometimes feel in Korea, I would feel even more because of being a darker skinned black man. I was told that people would point at me, they would stare at me, they would laugh at me, things of that nature. And I'll go more into depth about those things and what actually happened when I was in Korea in a different video. As far as whether or not that happened to me, those of you who read my previous blogs know that that did not happen at all. So, but what is it that set my experience, excuse me, apart from that of those who maybe did feel those things? I would say there's three key areas that I did that made my experience a little bit different from some people. And to be honest, every black person that I've talked to in person that's gone to Korea, gone to Japan, absolutely loves it. So it's not this overwhelming thing that I've seen personally where people just feel like they feel hatred in Asia. So just keep that in mind. But the first thing for me was having an open mind. And that's something that a lot of people don't have when they go to a different country. And maybe you've been this way yourself, or maybe you've had friends like this where they don't want to try new things, they don't want to go certain places, they don't want to follow the customs of the area. So probably the biggest thing that Asian people would find offensive that some American people would do would be to say that I'll go, but I'm not going to take off my shoes at somebody's house. And people, of course, have different reasons for wanting to keep their shoes on. Some people's feet stink. Some people have dirty socks on. Other people have holes in their socks. Whatever the case may be. But just as people insist when you come to the United States or when you come to Canada, you gotta follow the rules of the country that you're in. You gotta follow the rules of the country you're going to when you go to Asia or Africa or anywhere else. And it is a very rude thing for you to leave your shoes on in somebody's house. So have an open mind about even small things like that, or even when it comes to trying certain foods or certain drinks. Now, does this mean I was willing to try everything in Korea? No. An example of something that I wasn't willing to try, there are dishes in Korea that use blood. So you'll have a blood sausage where it's a traditional sausage, meat seasoned, grinded. Sometimes if you go further south towards the sea near Busan, they use seafood instead of pork, but they add blood into the sausage instead of water or beer as a liquid. So I do not eat blood or any blood products for personal and religious reasons. So stuff like that I wasn't willing to try. Korea, there's hangover soup, where the base of it is cow's blood. So I'm not willing to try that. In some Vietnamese pho places, there are these jello cubes that are in the pho. And those jello cubes that are a dark red color, they're not cranberry jello, they're actually blood jello. So things like that I'm not willing to try. But there were other food items that didn't have any blood or anything weird in it, and people that I saw liked it, suggested I tried it. So why not try it? Certain drinks. You go to Korea, some of you who read my blogs know that there's somek and there's chimek. So are you willing to drink those drinks? Are you willing to try makgeolli? Things of that nature. And of course with alcohol, if you have a problem with alcohol, if alcoholism runs in your family, and you're not willing to go down that route, then that's fine. And normally you can explain that to people and they'll respect that. But when you're willing to try things that other people are trying, when other people really want you to have a good time, they think you're going to like something, and you're willing to eat it, then it helps to break down walls, to break down barriers. Then it's easier to see you as a friend. So going and having an open mind definitely is something that can be a big help. The other thing I would say helped would be language and culture. So I'll talk about language first. Unfortunately, many in America have this reputation of being people who feel that everyone should speak English, and even when they travel to other countries, they think everyone should speak English. This is despite the fact that it's universally agreed outside the United States that Americans do not speak proper English. But some people get offended and shocked when they go to another country and they cannot communicate because English isn't the language of the country. Well, you kind of know that before you even get a plane ticket to go somewhere. As far as English in Korea, there are a number of things that are in English. So when you're riding on the highway, you'll see an exit sign, it'll be in English and in Korean. When you're taking the subway, and there's subway stops coming up, they're normally announced in Korean, English, and Chinese. When you're taking a bus trip, so you're going from one part of the country to another and you're riding a bus, then when you go to a bus stop, they'll make the announcement in English and Korean that you're coming up on the bus stop and you have 15 minutes to do what you need to do at this bus stop. So there are English things, there are people who speak English in Korea. It won't always be the best English, but still it is English. However, when you can go and you can communicate with people in their own language, in the language of the country, it automatically makes people more comfortable. And is it an easy thing? No. It can actually be quite scary because if you don't understand everything, if you're not confident in your language speaking skills, then it's a difficult time. And so for me, going to Korea, I know that I'm not fluent, I'm not where I should be in my Korean, and so I was just nervous about it. But I was able to actually communicate with people. So could have full conversations in Korean, long conversations in Korean. There are times where I'd be with a group of people and just would randomly be interviewed, and everything went well. So when you can communicate with people in their own language and make them feel comfortable, again, the walls come down, barriers come down. It's easier to feel like you're a friend at that point. So definitely I'd recommend knowing the language, knowing as much of it as you can before you go somewhere. And then the final part that I'm going to touch on is knowing the culture. For those of you who have seen my writings, you know that I feel that culture is just as, if not more important than the language, because culture explains the language. And so, one example that I gave on the blog was that of if you're watching a Korean drama, you'll see somebody use the word halmoni, grandma, when talking to an older woman, even though that's not her grandma. So, it may not make sense to you, but when you understand the culture of Korean, that she is like everybody's grandmother, then knowing the culture helps explain the language. But knowing the culture in this situation was very key for me because then I knew how to act, I knew how to behave in a respectful manner. So in Korea, I automatically knew because of knowing the culture when I get to someone's house to take off my shoes either outside their apartment or in the entryway. I knew when I was shaking the hand of somebody older to use both hands, or when passing them something to pass it with both hands. I knew automatically to bow when meeting people, not just stick out my hand, and that when it's an older person to bow even deeper than I normally would for a person who is younger or who is around my age, or to use honorific endings like using yo at the end of sentences to show more respect. And so when I'm doing that, knowing that part of the culture, combining that with using the language, that's what makes it easier to become adopted as part of the culture, to be adopted as an actual person that belongs. One of the things people don't realize about Korea is there's been so many times that people who are not Korean have gone to Korea, caused problems, done all types of horrible things that it can become hard to trust people that are not Korean. But when you go and you're the opposite of those people, you show respect for Korean people, Korean language, Korean culture, then it becomes easier to adopt you. Then, instead of just being a friend, then you become like family and people love you and people care for you and people want to see you happy. And so for those of you that are wondering, that is that when you get to that point, that is when you're at a point where somebody will try to introduce you to someone else as, hey, this is my friend, she's single, she's looking for somebody, you seem like a good guy, why don't you two talk to each other and see what'll happen. That's when you get to that point where you can combine those steps of having an open mind, knowing the language, knowing the culture. Then people will do more for you when you go visit. And so it's the same in any culture. It's the same when you go to any country. If you can communicate and show respect, you get shown respect. And that's why so many people that are black love going to Korea and want to move back. And stories have always been of Korean people and black people, for the most part, in China not so much, but in Korea and in Japan, that they do experience some racism, some prejudice when they get there. But it's not because the color of their skin necessarily in a lot of cases, it's because they're not a part of the community. But when people see that they're serious about the language, serious about the culture, serious about everything that's going on and being a part of that, then people start to embrace them and then they're no longer the foreigner. Then that's when all those walls that were up before are completely gone. And that's the key. If you feel afraid because of walls and barriers, some of them might be just walls and barriers in your mind, and some of them might be in other people's mind. But you have to take a wrecking ball to those barriers. You have to take that wrecking ball and knock down those walls. And people have shown time and time again, it does happen, it can happen, and it will happen if you follow the right steps. There are numerous stories of people that are not Japanese having successful businesses in Japan and being embraced by the community. Same in China, same in Korea, same in other places. So don't feel like these are things that cannot happen or they're just a fairy tale or a fantasy. These things will happen if you do have an open mind, if you can communicate in the language, and if you do show respect for the culture. So as always, if you have any questions, any concerns, just leave a comment down below. You can leave a comment at my website, waygookinway.com, or you can go ahead and email me. contact@waygookinway.com. Thank you so much for all the love and support, and I'll talk to everybody in the next video. 정말 감사합니다. 수고 많으십니다. 안녕히 계세요. 예.